Introducing Billboard Pal, the mobile billboard. With your Billboard Pal, you can advertise anywhere, anytime. Just find your target audience and make unlimited connections. Billboard Pal makes advertising fun and affordable. Stand out from the crowd. Your future customers are ready to meet you.
Content over everything!
That stops the migration process in Australia. That we've had in recent times. So he was the guy that Tony Abbott, there was this whole stop the boats thing. He was actually born in Britain, and most people hated him, like really hated him. There's some parts that are very conservative, but all in all, it's quite a liberal country. Our policies are quite conservative, but the people themselves...
In what way liberal?
I mean, they're not anti-immigration, unless you go outside of the city. You go outside of the city, rural, and like all rural people, you're going to find people that are anti-immigration. You're going to find people that are closed-minded. But no, London has been a huge, huge experience for me, especially someone who is on paper British, who is legally British, to come here and go, okay, well, this is now home, and feel no sense of like connection. I don't feel a connection with London. It's really interesting for me to sit around and observe London and see what it's like, because it's nothing like the diversity that I've experienced in Australia. Australia is less diverse. It's something like 90% or 95%
But
white.
do you think Australia will end up like London eventually? With the level of immigration?
Maybe not the same level, but I think like most Western countries, it will eventually get to the point where immigration... I mean, right now, our largest foreign-born populations are the UK, over 1 million people born in the UK.
What's the population of Australia?
24 million, so
24.
quite
And
small.
you're saying 1 million have come from the British Isles?
They were born there. They're still British citizens.
So 4%.
Yep. So another 500,000 are from China, 500,000 from India, 125,000 from the Philippines, 100,000 from Italy, 100,000 from Greece. Yeah, I think there's about 100,000
1 million of
Vietnamese.
Italian, there are 1 million.
Well, there's no.
Someone's
There's,
got to
Maybe
make the
2
pizza, innit?
there's a lot of Italians in Australia, but London to me feels like a social experiment that no one's quite seen the results
Have
yet.
you travelled or visited anywhere outside
But
of
you can
London?
foresee it, can't you?
Britain? Have you spent time
in Britain?
In Britain, but outside of London.
So Brighton, Bath, a couple of places on the south coast. My granddad was born in Rye, Sussex. So I've been there. That's very much more homogenous, much more, I don't know. I've also travelled a lot of Scotland, like Glasgow, Edinburgh, Stirling, Perth, Inverness, the Highlands and down.
More than I've done. Aberdeen.
Sorry?
Aberdeen.
I haven't been to Aberdeen. I've heard it's just concrete.
Fluid.
Just grey, I've heard, from what I've heard. But
When you see films like Trainspotting,
I don't know. I feel just as foreign in London as any foreigner would. I don't
Should
think.
go to some countryside,
Sorry?
to some countryside.
Yeah, I mean,
3,000 people, 5,000 people, all English.
yeah, you do get them, and I can't. I'm not going to say that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know. That's subjective. But London, I see a lot of self-segregation amongst national communities. Australians do it as well. There's certain communities, certain parts of London, you'll just see like hundreds of Australians. There's 50,000 Australians in London. People don't.
It used to be Earls Court. Earls
to be,
Court
yeah,
was
remember
always
that,
the known area. But
So
is there-
now
the
it's
King's Cross?
now it's Clapham, Clapham, Shepherd's Bush, Leighton, There's quite a Leighton Stone.
I live with an Australian.
Sorry?
Chiswick. I live with an Australian in Chiswick.
Chiswick?
Melbourne.
Well, I live in Acton Town, so there's a lot of Australians in Acton.
Kiwis there as well.
There is. But self-segregation, I've noticed, is a huge trend here. You've got people from Somali communities that live in Somali communities, Nigerians living in Nigerian communities. I think that's a problem, because the only place where you actually come and you have people that are discussing with people from diverse backgrounds are places like these. Because when they go home, they're with their own people. When they go to school, a lot of the time they group themselves and self-segregate into their own people.
So is it a failing social experiment from an outside perspective?
It's
We're headed towards
subjectively. No, I don't think it doesn't have to head towards violence. I just don't think you can't call it diversity. If you've got groups that live by themselves in their own communities, you can't call that diversity. All you have is
Lots of
monocultures
isn't it?
within pockets. You know,
Yeah,
I don't call that diversity.
So there has to be something that unites us.
one reason, you know, to work toward.
I'm going to convert every 5 minutes.
You're joking.
No, but it is.
I
It's
was looking at the beard, maybe he's growing a
We,
beard.
I see. Now you tell me whether this is reality or not, but
Yeah.
a lot of Islamic problems in Australia.
we've.
You don't see it yet.
To be honest, we do.
Yeah.
There's some places we had problems in the early 2000s with Lebanese and Egyptian migrants in Western Sydney and Northern Sydney. Cronulla riots was a huge thing where it was mostly Muslim Australians against like the Anglo Australians, as they call them. But
Which is like criminality and what are they doing?
so it was mostly like harassment on beaches and stuff like that.
You have no grooming, no?
Nothing that we've uncovered. I mean, we've had enough grooming with Roman Catholic priests, and I mean that was only that's only uncovered like 40 years after the biggest problems were had. So you don't see any problems until much later afterwards. I mean, it'll take like 30, 40 years before we find out if there's any real grooming issues, to be honest.
Prime Minister. You all right?
I rate you for taking all that hate all the time.
That's it. But they talk about problems with the Islamic community in Melbourne, specifically Sudanese migrants. But a lot of people say that's media sensation, that it's just you're overconflating an issue, making it something bigger than it already is. I don't know. I don't live in Melbourne.
I've seen quite a lot of videos of quite sort of rabid, angry Muslims marching through the centre of Sydney, and fights in parks.
Well, you see it a lot in Britain now. You've got a lot of people that resent the country that they're living in. A lot of people in Australia that resent Australia. A lot of people in Britain that have moved over that resent Britain. I think it's common. It's very, very easy to hate Western culture at the moment. It's trendy. It's in.
Not show gratitude.
But surely there's less.
I mean, no. Surely there's some that have been subjugated and unfairly oppressed against, and sure you can resent them, but you know we are working towards something. I mean, it's not a benefit to hold on to that resentment towards Britain or towards Australia.
Surely in reality there's less to hate about Australia than there might be to hate about Britain. In terms of wars and imperial past.
So Britain came and
They're white, that's enough.
Is that all that matters?
Britain invaded, right? But we're still very associated with Britain as a colony. Like white Australians are the extension of Britain's arm that is still there.
How it's perceived,
You know.
yeah.
So they think of us as British. We think of ourselves as Australian because the British don't seem to think of us as British.
In Australia, have you been able to, in the debate, the Islamic debate, have you been able to separate ideology from race yet? Or people still lagging behind on that? So I think only now we're waking up to the fact that it's not so
Here comes a
race.
man with a bear, lucky bastard.
Oh yeah, what's going on, guys? Oh, Leon, what's up?
I mean, well,
I thought you
people
were
do
trying
need to remember that there is diversity in religion when it comes to race.
So boring.
I know.
What's wrong with you?
Well, we're halfway through a conversation, but
Oh,
Drink
that.
it. Got to pile out.
Huh? Halal, what?
Pale ale. Halal pale ale.
No, it's a star brewing, right?
No, it's good. You could join in. You could be our token. I've just realised this is 3 white guys talking.
Oh,
is
what,
not
now you want
diverse
a brown
enough.
guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Flavour.
Just a token.
Is that, yeah,
No.
yeah.
Oh, I love him. He's so agreeable. But no, I.
I think it's a bad idea to be so agreeable.
How long have you been drinking today?
all like, okay.
Since
No, I.
All right, Steve.
All right.
Steve, I think you got a wasp on your arm.
A wasp. My pet.
No, but I don't know.
Boris.
Domesticated.
What?
So what's the argument?
The problem? Does Australia have the same problems
I know.
as
Some people
Britain
go
does in
crazy.
terms of Islamic?
It's nowhere near potent enough yet. From what I see, it's
I can actually like tell you like exactly why people are fucking reacting to this. Easy.
What?
Yeah, but I'm drinking a beer, so it's like fucking stupid.
You
Well,
can
Why
give us your
people
knowledge.
reacting to what?
Well, like everyone like talks about the EDL and stuff. It's a reaction to like what's happening. Isn't it really? Isn't it? Isn't it?
A natural reaction.
Yeah.
I can- no,
Well,
I can-
I mean, I don't think it's natural.
I don't
I think
think.
it's fucking. I think it's like really like hostile, actually.
I don't think that the argument, right? If you wanna argue that that British people should have a right to express themselves and a right to protect and defend their societies and culture and Western liberty,
Yeah.
I do think there needs to be a better mouthpiece,
Well,
right? There needs to be someone more
Other than
intelligent.
So what about
Other than Tommy.
I don't.
what, Pauline Hampton?
But he's not-
How
She's
much-
an idiot. She is an
Is she an
idiot.
idiot?
I mean,
don't know much
she's
about
not
her.
intelligent. She's from the same city
So
that I'm
the-
from.
the-
I mean, she identifies problems that are problems, but misrepresents people by.
I'm not gonna go on camera. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Misrepresents the problems and the people that are having the problems because she can't articulate anything.
Not very bright.
She's not articulate.
How old are you?
I'm only 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So like as a 19-year-old, how have you defined your like beliefs? Like what have you done?
growing, developing.
Okay. It's like when I was 19, I was a fucking stupid cunt.
I'm sure there's many things about me that are very,
Yeah.
very stupid
Okay.
and
So
naive.
you haven't solidified your fucking ideas.
No,
yet.
no.
But
So you're
but that
like-
happens at different stages. It doesn't always
Does
happen at
it?
the same. Yes. Some people it happens very young. Some people it never happens. You must have met you've met older people that it's still not happened.
Are you allowed to bring that up?
Yeah,
Of course
yeah,
he's not. That's
I'll give
theft.
it to you, bro.
It's his own jug that he brings from home.
No, but how much do you see on the news even hear about stuff
No, I
happening in
just like-
Australia?
sorry, I just like-
It's not as much of a problem,
Politically,
really. Like Australia is
because
minor.
I live in a bit of a bubble online, and obviously
When I was
I
like
see
your
a
age,
lot of
I
and
didn't
watch
know
a lot
shit.
of.
I can't imagine like being like going in like even on camera. I can't imagine like going and saying my fucking opinion. That's fucking stupid.
Well,
Why?
my whole thing
Why?
is if
Why
my
is that
opinion
stupid?
At 21.
if my opinion
Oh,
is wrong,
because of his age. You mean?
Yes.
no,
Yes.
if my opinion is wrong, then I want to be able to look back in 4 or 5 years and go, okay, this is what I thought.
Well, that's not your time then. Is that everyone's time?
I mean, you know, I don't know.
Well, like,
But you like.
So you don't think you had anything worth saying when you were
no,
19?
I definitely didn't.
Really?
Absolutely not.
That's
No
not great, is it,
way.
really?
No fucking way. Oh, God. Please.
I wanted to say that, but I-
Did you?
But what do you think? Can I ask from an outsider?
I went up when
God,
I was
no.
when I was 19, so I just started university, and at the time that I started university, students were really apathetic. So earlier on, students have been really politically active
Yeah, of
on
course,
throughout history. But at the time that I was a student, I thought it was really crap that students were so apathetic about stuff.
Right.
So, and one thing that happened around that time was the poll tax and the poll tax riots.
Yeah, of course. Oh,
and I
that's-
thought that was a really good,
That is
powerful
something.
moment.
That's something
So
real.
I don't know if you probably haven't heard of that.
No.
So the Conservative
too young.
government, Margaret Thatcher,
yeah.
she created a new system of taxation
Uh-huh.
that didn't go down very well at all, and literally it ended up with riots.
Yeah.
Riots across London, demonstrations across every single town.
Okay.
So they had to drop it, and she ultimately lost she was no longer Prime Minister on the back of that. And there were mass protests, and I got involved in that. And
Okay, so
demonstrations and
the thing
stuff.
for me that drew me into politics and international politics in particular was the 2014 migrant crisis. Because
Can I ask you, sorry to interrupt, but you're conservative, essentially, right?
I would like to call myself a centrist. Like, in a spectrum, a centrist.
Yeah.
Economically, I believe in a lot of socialist. I believe in funding for schools, fundings.
And you're 19, right?
Yeah.
So, sorry, I have trouble with that.
Have you heard of opinionated European?
Yeah, I know who that is.
She's a she now.
Chill out, bro.
Just saying. She's 19 years old,
Yeah, but I still.
and she's got a smart head on her shoulders.
She's got a conservative head.
She has, but whether you agree with her specific politics,
I know.
she is a lot smarter than I was when I was 19.
Yeah, I know.
And her opinions,
I agree
and
with
I
that.
tell you where you agree with them
No,
or
but
not.
you're agreeing with like her because why? Because like
No, I know she just.
she agrees
I
with
happen.
you.
No, nothing to do with the subject matter. Of
No,
what her
someone
beliefs
can be
are.
intelligent
It's
and
her
you don't believe it.
intellectual
It's impossible
capacity
for me to,
as a 19-year-old.
Yeah, I know.
She's got, I think, incredibly well-developed intellect. Whether you agree with her political views
No,
or
I
not,
agree, yeah.
she can talk about shit that I seriously could not have talked
That's
about
what
when
I'm
I
saying.
was 19.
Someone who is articulate
Yeah.
is something that we do need, regardless. I mean, you've got people that are looking for some representation of people who need a voice,
So you're
and I don't
glass
think
carrier.
that can be. In all honesty, I don't think that can be Tommy Robinson. I don't think he's articulate
not
enough.
articulate.
I no,
Yeah,
no.
so
He's a town crier, he's a man of the streets, isn't he?
So his message is pretty much the same as Douglas Murray, but clearly Douglas Murray is someone who's incredibly more
much more
articulate.
articulate.
Tommy Robinson.
So what do you see, for me, as an outsider, what do you see as London's biggest threat to its culture, to its democracy?
You think it's
And what
Our
part?
enlightenment values.
And
Do you really think
We
it's
don't protect our enlightenment.
But you could also say knife crime, and that's not a specific Islamic problem. Although apparently it is increasingly.
I think Islam's like really like dumb. God, is that?
He's not
But like
pointing
no,
at
but
you.
yeah, it's like completely the same as.
But its influence on British culture and society and law
Yeah.
is way above the proportion of the people that it is. It's 5% of the population, but it has significantly more than 5% impact on British law.
I mean, you look at Speaker's Corner. I'm pretty sure Speaker's Corner is at least 50% Muslim.
Well, exactly, and,
mean-
and that's a good, it's probably an exaggeration of the wider problem, but it is the same problem.
No, but when you got, I'll agree that when you've got a lot of people that are all like channeling the same ideology, right?
And
in a place like this,
quite an extreme version of it.
I don't even think they can agree on which version of it. That's the biggest
No,
problem.
well, that's also
they can't agree on which version of it.
But the ones who have sway, the ones that have the biggest voice, the largest voice, are the more radical end of the spectrum.
I don't think it's the most radical. I think it's the most palatable.
Well, within the law in Britain was changed a few years ago.
I mean,
So
you haven't
now-
got anyone that's like Anjem Chowdhury here.
Well, that's the point I was going to make. Now, whereas about 5 years ago you could, now if you actively support or encourage membership of IS, that's a criminal offence and you can end up in prison. Which is why Anjem Chowdhury finally ended up in prison. But 10 years ago, I forget the precise point, you could do that legally.
Did
there
that
were
happen here?
And there were people that came to Speaker's Corner and did it, and some of them are currently in prison, still in prison for it, because they actively supported the likes of ISIS.
Is that a problem that you solve? Is that a problem that you solve with immigration caps? Is that a problem that you solve with measures to control
We were talking
borders?
about this earlier. It's not a problem that you can solve easily or through just one thing. I think that you have
Is
to
it a
think
problem
about.
that you solve with Brexit?
Sounds like you're trying to figure out the Winston.
No.
To me,
That's why people voted.
I mean, are you?
to me, Brexit isn't connected with this problem that I'm identifying.
Okay.
Particularly, some people do connect.
Some people do, and I think, again, from an outsider's perspective, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but there did seem a fear factor that they used in Brexit that was, okay,
There were lots of fear
migrant
factors
crisis
used
has
on
just
both
happened,
sides,
we've still got people pouring in, now is the time to...
I voted for Leave. I voted for Brexit, and I can tell you, immigration wasn't even on my list of reasons. It's all about sovereignty
economics and
self-control.
Yeah. And being able to control your own laws, I know. But
You know, Islamic immigration is an issue, but I don't know. I haven't come up with a solution that
I don't think, for me...
But I can understand why Trump has said and done what he's done, because
Again,
Islamic immigration is a specific issue, but how you tackle it is difficult and challenging.
I don't think that this country really has high levels of integration.
No,
You've got people.
you said earlier.
You've got people that can come in here, and realistically, they can find their own diaspora. They can find people who speak, and it's not just limited. It's not just limited to Muslims.
No.
I mean, you've got,
Bro, fucking Leon's a fucking Zionist. Leon's a fucking Zionist.
What's up?
He's a Zionist. Who are you?
Who am I? Who am I?
So no, you are right.
Yeah.
But almost
Well, I can
we,
do it
as
again.
Britain, we almost encourage it.
Do you see it as a sort of, okay, this is how, or do you think British society sees it, okay, this is our reparations for colonialism, this is what we
It's
deserve?
imperial guilt that we, in my view, that we.
Like everyone like thinks we like pretend work for a while.
Yeah,
That's
carry,
the explanation of why we behave like we do.
Anyway, is a great bullshit.
Yeah, of course it is, because should you feel guilty about what the Romans did to this country? Clearly you shouldn't.
Look, all the time I solve this situation like that. You are someone who preach white guilt. Okay, yeah, we did this to Africa, we did this to South America, in India, in China. Okay, go there. Offer yourself as a slave. We are even. It's not something that you have to do to talk to me. It's something that you have to talk to yourself. Go, offer yourself as a reparation. I'm here. African enslave me.
But do you?
I mean, there is something that,
as an
that you
Italian,
have not to do.
But as an Italian, right? Have you noticed Italians in London as well form Italian communities where they speak to Italian people, where
But does that not happen everywhere around the world?
it happens everywhere, which is where I mean I'll probably get into it next. At what point does what culture infringe upon your Western ideals? You know, which cultures do and which cultures don't. Which cultures can maybe not even integrate but coexist within the same bubble, within the same sphere. You know,
And an example of that, I would say Sikhs. Sikhs
Have done really
have
well for
integrated into Britain, but not at the expense of rejecting their own cultures and practices, etc.
still very
etc.
traditional.
Yeah, exactly. Still very traditional, but they've committed themselves to Britain and they respect Britain.
Which I respect.
And I wouldn't say the same could be said to Muslims.
Islam's political, Sikhism is not. Islam's inherently
Muslim have always this problem of not before come my law of my prophet. After they say no, after we call of the English law if it's possible, the Italian law if it's possible. Everything is according to the Quran. So you have to find the similarities from Quran and English law.
There
It's
is-
balanced a bit. You say not too much
No, I would say there are
similarities.
some interpretations of Islam, and clearly it's not all interpretations, but there are some interpretations of Islam, and the one that I'm talking about is the one that's in our faces, is completely incompatible side by side with ours,
Irreconcilable.
I would say. Irreconcilable. Cannot exist peacefully, calmly,
Well, like
sensibly.
like Salafi Wahhabism.
Interpretation, but
Yeah, that's it.
no actual interpretation. If Islam is it means submission, I don't know. Which
Well, the
interpretation you want to
translation they
give. I
give
mean,
is like
is submission.
Islam is submission to God, or
Submission to
peace
someone.
through submission to God.
submission.
And polygamous marriages, marrying children, marrying people that are young.
But that has its roots
basic.
that has its roots in culture as well. I mean,
but is predominantly associated with.
Of course, if your culture is supported and reinforced by scripture, you're going to feel like you have this moral justification for your culture.
But there are some things that are absolute breach of UK law that Muslims do. We allow them to.
Okay, like Sharia court undermining British court, I think that's a problem because it undermines your legal system.
You have to have one system of law.
That's one of my biggest problems is that you can't have a dual system. I mean, I know some countries do that. Like India has 3 systems or more than that for the Hindus, for the Muslims, for the Christians.
They have separate legal systems.
They do, and you get charged for. So a crime can be charged differently depending on which religion you follow.
Really?
So a Christian Indian might get fined for theft, whereas a Muslim Indian might get his hand chopped off. They literally have different systems for every religion. Maybe it's different. I know there's different provinces. Maybe it's different in different provinces. I don't know. But generally, they work within their own legal systems. But that's not something that you want here. You should be able to have one universal law that you follow within the UK. You don't want.
If you want everybody equal, you must have one law. No? After I do the special law for someone, I do the special law for someone else. We have fucked everything. What is this?
You've been around longer than I have. Have you noticed much change within your own life?
Yes,
in terms
hugely.
Yeah.
And just in Speaker's Corner alone, it's a huge change.
Yeah. I mean, I could ask a personal
but beyond
question as well. How much?
Tell you if I don't want to answer.
How much does it affect your personal life?
It does.
Here?
So, my son started going to primary school.
Yeah.
And where we live is quite a high Muslim population. The school dinner menu, 100% halal, no non-halal alternatives. So you start at 4 years old.
So if he wants a sausage roll, that's
out of the question, completely out of the question. You start at 4 years old. I don't know whether it's the same in Australia.
5.
4-year-old girls in hijabs, which I find completely offensive. I thought it was about modesty and covering the hair and sexualisation. So, they are sexualising their 4-year-old girls. I just think that's wrong on every front. A lot of the mothers who would drop off the children at school and pick them up at the end of the day wearing niqabs would refuse point blank to communicate with myself or my wife if she was dropping them off. In this country now, and probably it's the same everywhere, kids even from the age of 4, birthday parties, really big thing. That again is complete segregation and refusal to integrate. So and we did ask, does Mohammed want to come to our son's birthday party? Doesn't go there at all.
Yeah.
No willingness to do anything outside of school and to mix with the other kids at all. So we appealed and tried to get him into another school. The appeal wasn't successful, so we went private. Okay. So that's now costing us £18,000 a year to educate him.
Okay.
I would say largely because of the things that I just described.
I mean, for me...
And he was the only white kid in the class, which wouldn't necessarily be an issue, but when so many of them were from such a culture as we're describing, that's not good. And that's not the environment I want my child to grow up in.
Well, I can understand that from there's no relatability, there's no one like me in the class. But, I also agree, it's not necessarily
when
a bad
thing. We appealed to the local council and made that very point. Their response was, is he being bullied? Is he being physically attacked?
Yeah.
No. So they would have, they had no acceptance of the issue that we were identifying at all. And that's not uncommon, that's the education sector across the board.
Do you see Britain promoting this idea? I mean, promoting this change.
Actively encouraging.
There's this false idea that I think that there's a lot of people that believe that change is progress, right?
It depends what direction
that
change is. Though,
exactly. But there's this notion that all change now means progress. People misidentify change as being progress when sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But I mean, the trend is only going forward. You know, it only appears to be this in the future.
But you would hope it can change track or go in a different direction. You know, I seriously
I
hope.
noticed that
Because they're 5% of the total British population. They're 5% currently. Obviously, in that area, they were more. What's going to be happen? And you know, people have talked about this and given other examples of different countries. When they get 10%, when they get 15%, when they get 20%, if they're managing to get those rights or entitlements or however you want to describe them now, with a total of 5% of the population, what's it going to be like when they get more?
I don't know. I don't know. But I mean,
So
another thing that I do worry about is like slandering laws, defamation laws, blasphemy laws.
They, and this is another big thing for Speaker's Corner, they are, by stealth, introducing or having introduced blasphemy laws. You know, there's been, it's been tempered a little bit at the moment, but there's been so much pressure here at Speaker's Corner
it
to
already
limit
is
freedom of speech.
It already is quite politically correct. I mean, I worry about even coming on camera because I'm young. I mean, I want to have job opportunities. I don't want my message to be misconstrued and so people start pointing fingers like, oh, he's a racist, because that could severely limit my job opportunities.
Which is why of all subjects and all points, that is the one that I challenge the most sort of strongly when they just bandy around this, oh, you're racist.
It's a dangerous accusation to make.
It's the boy crying wolf. Because when the wolf really appears, no one will believe it. When there is a real...
Well, when you've got someone that is
racism,
like some neo-Hitler with a racist ideology, a violently racist ideology.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do worry about that as well. I mean, I don't think honestly, I don't believe that there is even 2% of the population of Britain that is racist or violently racist.
Exactly. Yeah. Completely.
I'm not violently racist. I'm not racist, let alone violently racist. So I don't know. It's a big thing to worry about. Is the finger pointing? You know, as soon as you have that finger pointed at you.
And it's only that religion that does it, even though that religion is as multi-ethnic as any religion that exists. You know, you get people of all colours, backgrounds, heritage, ethnicities that are Muslims. So therefore, to play the race card,
right. I do think it's been mislabeled. It's not a race problem at all. It's an ideological problem, and an ideological or religious problem should never be mislabeled as race. If you can't differentiate between race and ideology, that's a problem.
Yeah, of course. But I think one of the reasons it's done is because race, from a political perspective,
it's very dumbed down. It's a simple message.
You get to be racist. Yeah. I think across our society is viewed as the most evil of all stereotypical discrimination.
given the historical context.
You can be casually homophobic, you can be casually sexist, you can get away with it, you can make jokes about it, it's fine. People don't turn they don't notice it, they don't respond to it. But the one most heinous crime is to be racist. Yeah, I couldn't stand here and be casually racist and get away with it, but I could stand here and be casually homophobic, I could stand here and be casually sexist. And I would be applauded by it. We used to have a game, well, they still get it, called Top Trumps, where kids have cards and you say, right, I've got a whatever and my car has this size engine. Oh, my car has this size engine. And I think that, and I always say the top trumps of diversity and inclusion, race and ethnicity, is always the winning card. It always seems to have more clout to it.
So my issue with it only enforces this focal point on race. I mean, to keep pointing fingers and saying that race is the primary problem, it only magnifies the problem of race. If you keep looking at race longer, then race is all you're going to see after a while. I mean, you start forgetting about ideological problems. You start.
Well, you forget. You start forgetting or ignoring, or it becomes devalued. Actual, real racism, like you said. You know, the small number of real racists that actually do exist.
And I'm sure that they should be condemned.
Of course.
Where they do exist.
I'm saying racism is bad.
Exactly.
But I personally don't think there should be a pecking order of what's worse than the next. If you're homophobic, it is evil and as wrong as if you're racist. But again, because so much in this religion that we're talking about is inherently homophobic, it's yet another example how we have to tolerate their rabid horrible, angry homophobia because that's part of their religion, that's part of their scripture, part of their culture. But we'll throw the word racism around where it doesn't even apply. Yet we have to tolerate and accept their homophobia because that's their culture, that's their religion. It's the what do they say? The expectation of low expectations.
The bigotry.
The bigotry of low expectations, almost, there, and that would be the racism.
Yeah.
They're dumb Muslims, so they don't know any better than to be horribly homophobic.
I mean, I can walk around here and even like Muslim scholars, they're very, very intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an oxymoron, I think. That's a contradiction.
Honestly, I think I do. I think that there is some people that are very, very intelligent, like they and that are like Muslim scholars. But it's, I think you said a similar thing before. It's where you put that intelligence, where you put it into. I mean, I think an intelligent person can convince themselves of anything.
But that, to me, is the most perplexing thing. Highly intelligent people that are highly religious, whether they're Muslim, Christian, or anything else.
Yeah.
To me, that is the oxymoron. How can you be highly intelligent and have the mental capacity to understand all these complexities of science or whatever else, but you're following this dumb shit written in the desert thousands of years ago?
For someone who is very liberal, and I'm agnostic or atheist, for me, it does seem like a shame. It does seem. I mean, if they can recall names from the Bible and from the Quran like crazy, they can recall. Okay, this passage, they've got really good cognitive abilities, right?
But some of it is just memory, isn't it? It's just memory is an ability. It is an aspect of intellect, but it's far from the only aspect.
It's not the only, but
intellect.
It demonstrates. It demonstrates.
But they're beaten as kids to do that. and there's been hidden video footage, and ex-Muslims have told me it is the absolute norm in madrasas across mosques in Britain. The kids are regularly beaten and physically attacked because they get a line wrong from their recitation of the Quran. So when it's beaten into you, it's not that surprising that they bloody well learn it off by heart, because they'd be beaten if they don't.
I haven't seen any of the videos, but I can say that is a problem consistent with religion in general.
Yeah, the Catholic Church.
That similar stuff happened within the Catholic Church. This punishment for not remembering, but I don't know. I don't see it. This whole populism, you've got people jumping from extremes to extremes. This struggle. They can't ever find a balance between left and right. They can't ever find.
I think this whole left versus right.
Okay, that's a bit of a dumb
categorization. Yeah. It doesn't have much value these days.
It doesn't.
Because I would say some of my views are right wing, some of my views are left wing. It's a mishmash of, and you're not one or the other.
I mean, I don't know how many full-blown conservatives would protect homosexuality in the same way that libertarians or Western liberals might.
And also, they will not stone them to that. I mean,
and it's risky making comparisons between different countries, because what might be viewed as right-wing in Australia might be quite left-wing in another country. So conservatism, in one nation is very different.
For an example, our Liberal Party is considered in Australia right-wing or centre-right. Right? In lots of countries, a Liberal Party would be a left-wing party.
Yes.
So the spectrum is different for every country. You've got some right-wing parties in Sweden and Norway that are considered left-wing parties here. So as soon as you do label someone as left or right-wing.
And in America, the Democrats Party would probably be quite close to our Conservative Party.
It is. In terms of policy, I don't think the Conservative Party is actually quite conservative here.
And increasingly so, and they're getting quite a lot of flack for it.
Do you believe that there is at the moment, again from an outsider's perspective, I think there is quite a vacuum of good candidates in terms of politicians.
Big time. The quality of certainly the leadership, whether there's any of the sort of the backroom guys, but the leadership, we're in an appalling state.
Well,
our three main leaders, Jeremy Corbyn, Theresa May, and Vince Cable, is the leader of the Lib Dems. None of those three are strong leaders, in my view.
The only thing and the problem there being, the only thing I can see happening as a result is people waiting for an extremist or a populist
And in
that
a
is
way,
going to.
that's what's already happened with the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn is an extremist. Jeremy Corbyn is of the far, far left, and he's the leader of the official opposition party. We have that, so that's already happened. One party has lurched to an extreme position. You know, openly Marxist, openly supporting communism. It's scary. And if we have a snap election and he wins,
It could be interesting.
on so many different fronts, it's going to be, interesting, putting it mildly. But he's bribing the young population who are too young to remember what parties of that ilk and that position and what politics are like and what the impacts of them are. And he's bribing them openly with like free travel and.
But I think it's important that if you want to combat that, if you want to combat, someone like Theresa May as well, you've got to have someone that is articulate enough to carry the point across. You can't have, unfortunately, as many people as someone like Tommy Robinson might represent, he's not articulate enough to carry a point across.
Does Australia have a first past the post system?
We do, I think, from memory.
Because that is one of our problems. Because in other European countries...
Actually, no, I think it might be different. I'm not sure.
In other European countries that don't have first past the post, new parties can be created and can come to, sizable...
Ours is very much a dual party system as well.
Right.
So
for a new party in this country to get anywhere with our system of democracy, it's very, very difficult.
So we only really have the Liberal Party, the Labour Party, and the Australian Greens.
What's Pauline Hanson's party?
She's One Nation. So for us
Do they have
in
many
Australia,
members of parliament?
No, it's considered fringe.
But single percent figures.
Yeah, the problem again with her is she's not articulate. I don't believe she's intelligent.
Is she the leader?
She is. So she points out things that are problems for some people, doesn't articulate, and I think she misrepresents a lot of people. So some people are anti-immigration in Australia, which she is very anti-immigration. Yeah. Right? It actually makes their argument worse because they've got her preaching the message of anti-immigration, but really unintelligently, which isn't help. It's kind of like if you've got a problem here and someone agrees with it, but you pick the dumbest person to make that argument, your argument is going to look terrible. So even if you want to have migration caps, even if you want to have systems like Australia does with the point system, which we use. I mean, you basically Australia gives migrants or prospective migrants point system, points based on their skills, their age, level of education.
You can change the weighting or whatever according to the needs of the economy.
Yes.
Because the Australian system was often quoted during Brexit and during elections and stuff. And, some politicians said you should have an Australian points-based system. But then some people responded to that saying, yeah, but Australia has more immigrants than we have, so therefore their system would be worse. But I think you can adjust it according to need, as and when you need to.
I mean,
so if you need lots of immigrants because you've got lots of jobs, then you'd up the.
But Australia also has a higher fertility rate than Britain as well.
Really? So, and that's our problem. We're not breeding. We're not having kids.
Our fertility rate is only 1.7, but Britain's is 1.4 or something.
Yeah, something like that. So you're not a lot higher, but you're a bit higher.
But the European average is 1.3 or 1.4. So it's low, very, very low. You've only got like 3 countries that are over the replacement level, which is 2.1. And I think that's Ireland, France, and
Italy is 1.2.
Yeah, 1.2 even in Italy.
Yeah,
1.1 in Spain.
Becoming a Catholic anti-contraception that would be having lots of babies. No,
Italy is
I mean that's Ireland. I would say that's behind why Ireland has a higher rate because the Catholic lack of contraception.
You misjudge Italy if you think it's a Catholic country. Italy was never a real Catholic country. It was a Greek Roman Catholic country. It's different.
The Greek Orthodoxy.
No, Greek from the pagans. No, Greek from. It's different. An Italian speaking with a Catholic Italian is different than speaking with a Catholic from Brazil or from another
But what do you see the solution being? Is there a solution in Britain, for Britain?
I think we do have to control levels of immigration, not to zero. We will always need immigrants, but we need to control it. We need to keep it in check more. We need to have one rule of law for all. We can't have parallel systems. And in reality, I think on a number of fronts we do have parallel systems.
You've got parallel legal systems, parallel societies in general.
We can't have blasphemy by the back door. Freedom of speech, obviously I come here regularly, I think it's a very important aspect of our general freedoms. We can't stop, we can't try and stifle and limit freedom of speech just to placate this one group of people. I do wonder whether we need to look at a whole benefit system. I think limiting benefits to 2 children is sensible. Because currently there's no limit, so you can have 10 children and you get...
I mean, do you see then a further decrease in fertility rate?
No, because British people are having 1.4 or whatever it is. So, maybe 3's the cap, not 2.
Yeah.
But you have to have a sensible cap to that.
I mean, so are you fiscally conservative then? Do you believe in some socialist aspects?
Yeah, no, I do. Absolutely.
So,
socialist aspects.
obviously, when it comes to funding for
healthcare, education,
policing, I mean...
They should be free at the point of delivery. I don't personally have a problem where the private companies are providing the services, but they should be free at the point of delivery.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are politically driven that they should be provided by and run by the state, and the employees should all be state employees. Irrelevant to me. I don't care whether it's a private company or whether it's a state company. In fact, I think there's argument for more being run by private companies.
I mean, you have
they
like
do it better.
You can do it. You can do it as your system. It already happens like that. You've got a private system and you've got a public system. And
yes, but the provision of the public system, there are already some roles that are performed by the private sector in the public system, cleaning, stuff.
True.
And even some operations and some sort of regular operational stuff, and I have no problem with that at all.
Oh, honestly, if you get someone who's doing the job best...
Exactly. It doesn't matter whether they're on a public sector contract or a private sector contract. And we must stop rolling over and placating them. Whatever they demand, we give in to.
So do you think that Britain is already capitulating too much?
Yes, big time. Hugely so.
So do you? I don't know. Again, I'm very young. I don't think my generation.
Really, I think that. I agree with that.
No.
And that's because the media, the state, whoever it is, have been very successful at sowing this message that anyone that says something like I'm saying is a racist.
It's like Salem witch trials. It's,
probably good analogy. And therefore, and the education system, the state education system
just
in
having
this
come out
country
of
is very left wing.
Just coming out of high school, even in Australia, it's quite left wing. I imagine very, very similar.
And if a child says anything along the lines of what I've said, or mentions Trump or whatever, there's been cases where they've had social services knocking on the door.
You'll find people my age want to talk about politics, but outside of when it's a drama, when there's a spectacle that happens, but as a whole are quite politically apathetic. They are.
Have universities in Australia gone down the road of safe spaces and all that nonsense?
Not as much as the US, but it's still.
Big hair.
Well, honestly, we see what the US does, and even if we don't implement the same laws, people follow the same trends.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even have to be a written policy; it's sort of just spoken policy.
And people being no platform. And,
you don't have young conservatives really in Australia given any platform. That's not a thing in Australia.
Because we've had left-wing campaigners, gay rights campaigners, who've been no platformed by universities just because something that they said at some point that's been interpreted as no, that's hate speech.
Well, the whole thing about universities is that's where you're supposed to hone your intelligence. You're supposed to developed your
We
intelligence.
debate things.
Where,
we
I mean,
consider-
if you're not...
Racist! Where've you two been? You've been down to the Rose Garden, eh?
But,
Down to the Rose Garden.
Spit. Oh, I said that on camera. Good God. Having sex with women, that's what
You've
I
been
was
to
doing.
the pub?
No, we were just, he was
How
having
dare you
a
didn't invite
crafty,
me?
I thought he was out of film.
Crafty what?
Fag as in a cigarette,
You,
right?
that fag.
No, he bites the pillow. I've done it again, shut up.
Shut your mouth.
He doesn't bet any of it, does he?
No, exactly, it
No,
all
he doesn't
goes
bet
up.
any of it.
Unedited.
What's the debate about?
So where
Tommy
were
Robinson.
we?
Not a
Interesting
debate.
conversation about the future.
Where Britain is headed.
Comparing Australia with Britain and the impact of Islam and
Dan
the future
Swanee.
and what can we do about it.
I think if, like as I was saying before, if people are not intelligent enough to pick what is a good and a bad message out of, even if it's someone that's conservative, right wing, coming to a university, if they can't decide for themselves whether that's wrong.
But if they're, as you said in Australia, if they're not even given a voice to express that view, so they don't even get to hear it.
It is almost
That's
almost
non-existent
non-existent in Australia.
So the voices aren't even allowed to speak.
Well, the only
So
voices that we
therefore-
do get are voices that come from the US and Britain. I mean, conservative.
Don't you find that a bit bizarre?
I mean, it's.
What voices do you think are missing? Sorry, I've jumped in this. a bit.
I'm missing.
Yeah, missing from the debate.
Right-wing fascist Nazis like me.
No, I think Australia and Britain too. I don't want to cut people that are from the far left wing out of the discussion because I need to hear it.
Yeah,
I need to know what they think.
absolutely.
I can't say I hate
But
that
the left
idea.
has changed so much.
I know. It used to be about freedom and
it's a
liberty.
joke.
You would
now.
say about the extreme far right, the actual racists, you
Yeah.
should still be able to hear them.
Yes.
To then call them out.
I
for
should
what
be
they
able to,
are.
but I should be able to hear
We're
the
all down
extreme.
with free speech,
I mean, there is a militant left, and we hear them a lot.
Tell me about it,
You guys still being stupid?
Yes.
yeah. Really, really
Carrying on,
stupid.
yeah.
We're thinking about if you walk around doing the higher sign.
Was there the
But the militant left
counter-gangster
used to be
thing when I
about
first met
socialism,
you?
communism.
Yeah, no,
but now
actually,
it's about crazy.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan.
You know, it's about anti-fascism and seeing fascism as in everything. But it
Yeah.
used to be about socialism and about workers' rights and things like
Have
that.
you heard of the Count-Dankula?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
going to say.
You're
I
aware
did.
of
I did. But like you said, just it's.
All the times you use the terminology like
There's a big problem with
anti-fascist,
the
anti-fascist.
free speech
What do you know
argument.
about
It's like-
anti-fascist?
What do you
I
have
mean,
to say?
is it,
They brand
I
anybody
don't know. I
against them as a
understand that is a
fascist.
moment from Italy. I don't know. What is fascism for you?
I think that come from Russia now. Fascism.
Fascist.
Well,
From
it
Italy,
actually
isn't
comes from Rome originally. I mean, it's the fasces, right, which they carried, the bundle of sticks the Romans carried. That's where it comes from. And I think
bundle of sticks.
the Third Reich, of course, refers back to the First Reich, which is the Roman Reich. I mean, that's
What was the second?
Well,
one?
it was
Frederick the
Prussian.
Great, wasn't it?
No, I thought it was Holy Roman Empire. Then it was the Prussians.
Which is Frederick the Great, I
Yeah,
presume.
yeah. And
I
then the
believe
Third
that's
Reich.
the Second Reich, yeah. And then the Third Reich.
What was the fourth one?
Well, that would be
That's
the
you,
East.
Steve. Steve is the Fourth
On
Reich.
camera.
On camera.
People think the Fourth
Mein
Reich is
Führer.
going to be
Mein-
the EU.
I think they are then.
But globalism is a problem. So the left could argue against globalism, but it doesn't. It's
But
actually hand in hand with the right.
yeah? Well, isn't globalism a little bit? It has to be. If you're going to impose globalism, it's got to be authoritarian. That's the only way to do it. And isn't authoritarianism a little bit fascist? I don't know.
Well, it's where the money is, isn't it? That's what the problem is. It's
think
how
it
do
is
you
then.
how do we exist in a global world without being a country that is globalist? This is the problem. We can't be
At the moment,
isolationist. We just can't.
Isn't, but what is globalist? Isn't globalist just about international business, about working across?
But but I don't think any country at the moment has any model for self-sustainability.
I mean, for me, globalism.
Really?
I mean,
must be
not many.
Oh,
only countries,
come on.
only countries that have been sanctioned a lot.
what is
Places
the
like
most
Russia.
self-supporting, self-sufficient country?
I don't know. It's probably
Never
a small.
say
It's probably a
Russia's
small
giving like
country.
1 hectare of land away
Not a
to
country
every
from the West,
family
that's
now.
for
No, no, no.
I agree with you. Shades, I can't see that.
It's probably quite a small country. I mean, in terms of self-sustainability,
It would be
somewhere in the
dare I
Pacific
say,
and
Guinea.
I was
an
going
island
to say it would be a
nation.
backward country if I can use that
No,
terminology.
you can't. You racist,
just did.
imperialistic twat.
But is globalism
You've got me, Steve.
but is globalism a good or a
You are
bad
the
thing?
Führer after all.
What degree of
What was that? Sorry,
globalism-
is it good? Well, the problem is that it has massive impacts on workers, right? So it drives wages down.
Yeah.
I mean, look, capitalism at the end of the day,
And it drives others up. They just focus on the down bit.
right? But the
Focus on
vast
the other
bulk
side
of
of the
people
seesaw.
suffer as a consequence.
Seesaw.
I mean,
Do they? Does
Yeah,
it not give employment to
well,
the
this is the whole.
Bangladeshis?
This is. Oh yes,
Or
one
the
could,
Indians,
one
or
could
what?
argue.
I mean, look,
that's not going to help
okay,
your working
globalism.
class Americans.
Globalism. Let's talk about a
Or
global
working
superpower
class
like China,
English.
right? China, which has
China's-
huge amounts of production, but the
It has
wage
very
of
cheap labour, right?
exactly
Yeah.
the average wage of a person in China is extremely low.
Yes.
But
Where
cost
that-
of living is extremely low as well, though.
Yeah, but we can buy our goods in China for much less than we could have them made here, and that puts people out of work.
And that's another thing as well. China's got one grade above. They're still having this thing called an industry that make things. We've lost that here. Which then we're not a capitalist country, that we're a non-making country.
Really want to.
No, but we've got to, I mean, look, forgetting globalism, what about the fact that eventually technology will replace human beings
Anyway.
almost entirely? So we need to be aiming long term for what we're going to do with all these people that are going to be out of work.
I'm sure.
Well, this is.
I reckon it's going to come down to voluntary work. Voluntary picking.
But what is
euthanasia.
Steve's terrible. He's such a heckler. What are we going to do with this bastard? No, he loves it. He loves it.
We should hang him.
The thing is, what he
Save
just
him,
said
save
gets
him.
all the YouTube hits. So if we make a sensible point, he just says,
That's not what it's all about.
"I'm the Fourth Reich," and everyone says, "Steve said he's the Fourth Reich. Let's watch you, Steve."
I'm tan. I'm taking.
You are
I'm
tan, actually,
I'm
yeah.
tan.
I think it is. I mean, globalism it's a problem, yeah, for sure. I mean, that was. I think it is a problem, yeah, for sure.
But
Okay, you're giving
work changes.
you're giving each other the resources that you need, the resources that you are lacking. But at what point do you create a dependency on other countries that undermines your own sovereignty? That's my question.
Which we've done. We've
But
gone over that,
selling off our utility companies to
Would
other
be,
states is certainly is an example of that.
Yeah, that's
Giving
what
Chinese
And that's not
ownership
globalism,
of
that's
our,
just stupidity, isn't it?
of our nuclear power plants,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example.
yeah. Okay,
Doing that sort of
Selling
dumb
our
shit.
water.
We've given control to some of the largest stations, like agricultural stations in Australia, are now owned by the Chinese government.
Really?
Do they come there and work though?
No,
See, that's
I mean
irrelevant.
not
Because
in that
the people who
industry,
represent
not in that
us-
No, but it
industry.
means
Don't
they,
represent
if
it.
they should choose to, can pull the strings. They can pull
Yeah,
the
but
rug.
what's the
But
worst
that's what
thing
I'm
they're going to
thinking.
do? Is they're going to pull the
If you
rug
talk
and then
about-
it's going to be
And,
bought
and
by
these
Globalism
countries,
is
when
that
you're talking
respect.
about China and Russia, they put so much investment into espionage and into spying on us, particularly on an industrial
Sure.
work basis.
They do
You know,
like to
why
steal
would
the
they?
patents,
Why
don't
would
they?
they be doing that? Why would they be doing that? Because if they really get pissed off with us, they can
can
have
undermine
some
your sovereignty.
serious
They
impact
can-
on our economies and our lives.
And that's a negative aspect, I would say, of globalism. You create these dependencies on other
I
countries.
totally agree with your point.
Even now, I mean, there's a lot of countries.
But the
that have-
EU, surely, I voted Brexit, right?
Yeah.
But the EU, the selling point of it was that it was an attempt to create a superstate that could compete with China and America. That was its only, to me, that was its biggest selling point. That we could have this state where we could take impoverished areas and we could treat them the way that China treats its provinces. So we could say, oh, we could move business over there. 'cause it'll be
Already,
cheap.
we are the 5th largest. What is it? Economy, GDP. I can't remember what the measure is.
It's
We are-
first, my brother. Through our stocks and shares, we do somewhat make a lot of money in that game.
Yeah, but that does not help. I mean, 85%
not the country as
doesn't
a
help
whole.
the country as a whole, does it? That's going into
but it's
private
taxable receipts.
It is tax, and obviously
And
those
that's another
people
thing as
necessarily
well. We're a
couldn't
nation of grass growers for some bizarre reason.
Grass.
Yeah, like that. I reckon is also a bit. Like for example, like we've got no agriculture. Like we've got no agriculture when it comes to farming,
Sure.
but we grow it for some bizarre reason. And
I mean, what
But
about
if we
solution?
can
Have
put
got a
on that,
solution
if
that
we
can
can
brandish
buy
around?
our grain cheaper from China, as long as you're not becoming dependent on one individual state, what's the problem with getting your wheat?
Because-
I mean,
cheaper
I would
somewhere else?
say, I would say you would. I would
think there
rather
is a
put
problem.
money into investment in improving the crop here or improving the crop in
But
countries.
do we want to
that
be
won't-
best at everything?
yes,
No.
Everything?
I think not best at everything, and we shouldn't be colonial powers. I don't think. I don't think we should enforce our. No, I
I
don't
mean,
think
we're
we should.
predominantly a service country now, aren't we? That's what we do.
Yeah,
We provide
yeah.
services,
Yeah,
right?
I don't think we should
We've got
impose
long
our.
gone is manufacturing in this country. It's gone. It's a service industry.
that is gone.
Yeah, it's
but
gone.
I think
But is that a bad thing?
if you're self-sustainable,
I understand.
the closer to you are to self-sustainability, to being independent of other countries in terms of food, in terms of other resources. I think the more
in terms of products in your home.
The more secure your sovereignty is. It means you don't have to.
The less
ask
dependency, you're saying. The less
Yes.
dependency. I totally agree, of course. Yeah.
Yes, and I don't know. Even when it comes to stuff like agriculture.
But can we exist in the world
No.
in some sort of isolationist
I think
position? I don't think we can.
it's got to be.
isolation.
Well, to be more self-sufficient, shall we say?
No, I think it's got to be picking
what
and
you're
choosing.
saying, trying to do the best of everything. I agree.
I think you have to pick very, very
You
carefully.
seriously think
What?
that we need the rest of the world to maintain
Not the
what
rest
we
of the
got?
world. Not the rest of the world.
To have the lifestyle that we have, yes.
I
To
look
have
at
the
our
lifestyle.
cars. I look at the cars that we produce. I look at the service industry we produce. Look at what the inventions industry are producing. I think it's the total opposite way. I think they need us far more than we need them.
No, I think
To buy their products.
Yeah. Like I'll be honest with you. I look at the cars that we can do. Aston, go on, pull a car that's remotely as nice as that.
But the problem is, let's say we rely on farming abroad. Our farming wanes, and we end up giving up farming. So the worst case scenario.
That's a really bad.
That's a
thing.
terrible scenario.
Yeah.
Right? We become totally dependent on
Yeah.
it, and then we can't even feed ourselves.
Why is that a terrible scenario?
Because we can't even feed ourselves. If we,
then
without
to them.
another country.
Without-
that's
As long
what
as
you're
it's
talking
not,
about.
as long as
And we
our
can't-
eggs aren't all in
I know,
one
but Steve,
basket,
the thing
as
is-
long as we're spreading the.
yeah, no, but we can.
Why does that matter?
We have
Steve,
democracy, and we can
it does,
change our own
because
policies.
all they've got
Why
to
does
do
it
is
matter if we don't have farming anymore? Why does that matter?
Because we
we're
can't
reliant on
influence
them.
the farming in the countries we're buying it from necessarily, right?
I mean,
Well, we choose where to buy it from.
Do you know
I
where?
agree.
Do
So
you know
you're
where we
assuming
get the
you're
majority?
assuming-
I don't know the actual figures, but do you know where we get the majority of our food from?
South Africa.
I think we're pretty well spread. Isn't
We're
it?
spread,
I
yeah.
honestly don't know.
We do get some stuff. So.
I mean,
We get stuff from Oz, right? We get stuff from New Zealand.
we export a lot of beef.
Yeah, we get lamb and beef and so forth.
But what I'm saying is, yeah, okay, you don't want to be completely isolationist, but you've got to pick which countries are and aren't going to undermine your national sovereignty.
I'm not just saying.
But it's still, at
we
the
need
end of
to
the day,
grow
we
our
still don't
own
have a long-term
vegetables. We need to grow
control
our,
there, right?
breed our
Because
own
if their market
cows.
collapses or they sell to
Because
somebody else, or the price rockets,
you will get more of a
we're
long-term
stuffed. And we
stability
can't
in
control it
employment.
democratically because we can only vote
Yeah.
for
You're not reliant on
our own
their
politicians. We can't control
policies
the
and
politicians
laws.
in another country. We
So,
can't control
and as well as
what
that,
China does with its
the standards that
produce,
we
or
want
whether
our
it wants to
food
impose tariffs
is not
or
the same as
like
what
what's happening in
others
America,
want their
right?
standards.
You know, this is the
Like,
problem.
Yeah, no, I get it.
like for example, the most prime
I think
example is
Steve's
halal.
argument is a very positive one.
Halal.
It's a very,
but
no,
I
it's,
just-
it
I
is-
don't
it's a very
feel so
optimistic
positive.
one.
It's very
But
optimistic.
also, we are told British people don't want to pick vegetables.
Yeah, we do.
This is it.
We don't want to pick it for
Can't disagree.
£7.50 though, Steve. That's what we don't want to pick it
Less
at.
than that, if you're
Yeah,
younger.
if you tell a person, all right, look, this favour, and then I think there's Orlando that proved this point. If you bring it up to £15, bizarrely people will be only too happy to pay, and the money that comes back in by taxes, and then will only make our
Right, but
country.
But on this
better.
subject, we've only had a statutory minimum wage relatively
Very new,
recently.
yeah.
in
Minimum
history.
wage.
Most
So,
countries
so
voted
therefore,
against the minimum
before
wage.
those recent years, people were picking strawberries or
next
courgettes
to
for
nothing.
a lot less than
But you know-
£7.50 an
They were
hour.
going on a holiday, Steve.
Yeah, but
To pick.
you know, you say
my
that.
grandparents and
Students
parents
used to
were
do
on-
it.
Yeah, you're going
But
on
students used to do
Do
it.
you
used to-
understand
our
how
house prices
confusing?
then were a lot
how
cheaper,
confusing
though.
Your minimum
Who
wage.
am I gonna listen
Oh,
to?
sorry.
Our house prices were a lot cheaper. I remember
yeah,
back
yeah.
then,
Still
when
are.
the
But that's
minimum
inflation
wage
as well.
come out,
You'd
it
be
was
eating
£4.50
something.
you get, and a house is at 30,000 in
See you,
London.
Steve. all right?
Yes, yeah.
See you guys.
Good night, nice to talk to you.
It was all in scale. Price of bread was next to nothing.
Yeah, I know, which
Sugar
is why
was
the
next to
cost of
nothing.
living
Now
is-
it's gone to £7.50, but a price of house in London is 1.1 million. It's like,
Yes, I've benefited severely from that.
yeah. But if we start
Putting on
to
my
work,
boss's voice.
I mean, I was coming into the country straight away. I was confused by your different minimum wages by age. The 18 to 21, the 21 to 25. I mean,
There is some logic to that.
Australia, you got quite high
If you're
wages, haven't
16
you?
years old.
we have the largest
Yeah, I think so.
take-home income
There you go.
in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that because taxes are low or
Wages are high.
Wages are high.
Wages are high,
What are the levels of tax?
the thing that brings it back down to earth, I think the level of tax is like 30.
I'm paranoid about having terrible
The thing that
breath.
brings
Me
it,
too.
You know, just tell me if I've got terrible breath, okay? Any of you
Because
guys
you
that
do
know
get
me.
people here that do, don't you?
Yeah, well, hopefully I'm not too
Let me
bad.
guess,
Can
are
you
they
Good man.
Muslims?
Oh,
Racist.
thank you.
No, not.
You're welcome.
The things that brings it back down into perspective is expensive places in Australia like Sydney, where you have to pay extortionate prices to live in a house. I mean, Sydney's just overtaken London for like in terms of
Really?
Yeah, in terms
It's got to
of
be a nicer place to live though.
no,
No, you would say that to Sydney.
no, I would say it's about the same. I would say it's about the same.
Fine. But it's-
What's your take on London, though? How do you feel about it?
I don't like London. I like being able to watch London. It's an interest.
What is it you dislike about it? I'm just sorry.
Please
Steve,
be honest.
Just curious.
I mean, I've been glassed.
They're talking about Tommy.
Yeah, I've been glassed. I've been
They're
held.
talking about like places.
Outside one actually.
Guys.
I've been held at knife point and
You're a
robbed.
fucking idiot, brother.
The one opposite.
Whereabouts were you when you experienced this thing?
I was near Leicester Square when I was robbed, and I was glassed in Acton Town. So
in a pub in Acton Town.
outside a pub, yeah,
not
just
the Belvedere.
walking down the street. No.
Any
well,
reason?
yeah.
Any couldn't discern a reason for the glassing. You don't.
I mean, it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere,
Sure,
but
sure.
I don't. The
But
thing.
that also comes down to the drinking laws that we've got in this country.
But also, when I first moved to London, I was mugged in Leicester Square, funny enough.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm missing out, yeah?
and then I was pickpocketed on a bus.
Yeah.
That all happened in the first 6 months that I was in London.
Then you wised up.
Well, that's what I think, and I wonder whether they can spot the.
I think so. They can spot a newbie.
Yeah.
But before moving here,
Get your hands in your pockets and your head down.
Yes.
exactly.
Or looking
They've
everywhere. That's
actually
another
done
one.
tests with. They've got guys that do muggings to actually say. They've shown them videos of people and said which of these guys would you mug, and it's always people do hands in their pockets and looking in the shop windows and all this kind of thing. You know, it's terrible.
Or the ones that just looking around in the main
Not him,
road,
not guys like him.
pointing.
Aggressive.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! Look at that!
No, but I
But that then comes down to the alcohol licenses.
London's also a very expensive city to live in.
Oh yeah. But if you throw a stone, if you're in an expensive part of London,
Yeah.
you throw a stone, it will land in a rough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One block
It's
to the
it's
next.
pockets.
But you see, the council estates, they're selling them off. The people that own the council houses are selling them off for ludicrous amounts of money, 300 grand,
Making
all this
a
kind of thing. It's crazy.
Making a lot back from them. I mean, you see the value of houses in terms of money, and then the value of houses in terms of how they're built, in terms of the actual quality.
Oh, new builds are appalling.
Tiny shoeboxes.
Yeah.
Mate, I wouldn't mind if there were
But the build
shoeboxes. They
quality's
just
bad,
don't
sorry.
build them no more. It's not even a shoebox they're willing to build. I don't even see, and this goes back to that same thing. We're not building. Like, for example, builders nowadays, they're not.
Building sites everywhere.
No,
Maybe
no,
not
it's
housing,
not.
maybe more
No, it's not. If you go back to Turkey, I'm not joking. Forget the green belt. We don't want green belt. We don't care.
everywhere.
There's people that need houses.
Build them.
Put the foundation down and get it on.
Yeah, but if-
And then all you got to do is just make another green belt a little bit further
The thing
down.
is, we
But I
don't
think-
have the infrastructure for it. That's the problem.
Yes, because I
Oh,
think it is the case that
please,
Britain
we
is
do.
one of
No,
the
we
most
don't.
densely populated countries in Europe.
And
We have
is
to-
that a
we
good
don't
thing?
have the infrastructure right for it. I mean, we don't have the doctors.
Or when we do
and the
develop
schools.
properties, we
Yeah,
often
yeah.
don't develop
That's
the
right. I've got that
infrastructure
problem in my
alongside.
place in Kent. It's terrible.
Again, that's another problem. That
Yeah.
why is that not getting done? Like we've got people that are more than happy to
But they're
build
talking about
railroads.
using student doctors now.
Yeah.
That while they're studying for 2 years, Pakistani student doctors, they study for 2 years, and during their study, they become doctors.
Well,
they're using them as doctors because we just have no.
It's the same problem. It's the same problem with education
Whatever it
in
is,
this
they go
country as well.
home with their
You
qualifications.
can teach as a training teacher. There's no requirement really. When I came here, they offered me a job as a substitute teacher
There you go.
with 0 qualifications.
There you go.
And I know I'm I'd be a
They're
substitute.
absolutely desperate.
But
And again, this is due to its manufacturing. If you're not manufacturing and you're just buying and buying and buying, it gets to a point of where you need to sell now. If you've not got sellers like that are making in the country, where's the money coming from? It's not. England is heavily reliant on Russian investors, Chinese investors, foreign investors,
What's the situation? I haven't been keeping up with it. What's the situation with Brexit now? I mean, because there was a lot of hope.
We're in
initially.
there for another 7 years.
No, there was a lot of hope initially where we were getting all these people wanted to trade with us. What's been going on about that? Because you can't read about it in the media because it's all such a biased.
Australia, there was lots of Australians that thought that we were going to get a good deal out of Brexit. Not going to lie, there was a lot of talk about British politicians during Brexit. They were like, okay, we want to rekindle these relationships with Australia, New Zealand, Canada.
We hope,
But we don't think it is anymore. We haven't really been reached out to. No politicians have really sought to make this connection in preparation for Brexit.
So you think that their hope is that they're going to just strike a deal with Europe and go straight back to trading with Europe? And
I think that's what that is going to. It is, because no British politician has come out to Australia or New Zealand or Canada and talked about a post-Brexit relationship.
We need to put Boris on a plane.
There's a terrible bias.
But they haven't gone to these countries.
Afterwards.
They've kept their foot firmly in Europe, saying we're leaving, we promise we're leaving.
Sure.
Without fully stepping out, without going to other countries.
Is that being talked about in the Australian media?
A little bit.
The Brexit stuff?
A little bit. Like I said, we thought we were going to get a fairly good deal out of it.
Are you a supporter of Brexit?
I assumed we would trade with you instantly.
Listen, we would support it if it rekindled the relationship with Britain that we feel that we've lost a bit.
I don't understand why
Australia is becoming.
Surely not all of Australia wants to rekindle a relationship.
No,
I don't think it does.
the other half is moving towards China because China is so close, because it's a power that.
You've got a massive country with a minimum amount of people in there. For heaven's sake, you lot can sustain everything. You can grow your own food, you can grow your own veg.
It means changing our lifestyle so drastically.
A lot of it is pretty barren though.
And I work with a lot of Australians. They're bloody hard workers, man. They're
all of them. I know a couple lazy ones. We have
even the ones that
say that about
like
Kiwis more than Australians.
and Polish.
Stereotyping.
And English are hard workers as
I've
well.
already been called a racist today. I'm going to keep out of that.
Racist, fascist.
Exactly. No words against Kiwis or Australians.
I know. I'm just,
I think it's almost bedtime.
It is. Yes.
we just love it. Isa's having his debate.
He's back on his.
He's back on. Yeah. He had a bit of a fight earlier.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. There was a big surge and.
I might grab some.
All right, shall we shoot off and call it a day on this one?
Yeah.
We must do. Yeah. We haven't
Nice to meet you. What's your name?
Michael.
Michael.
Hi, Michael. My name's James.
James.
Yep.
Steve.
Prophet Muhammad.
Legend.
I'm going to have to wash my hands. He's just blasphemy.
He's a terrible.
Blasphemy.
Catch you later.
Sorry, Steve. It's terrible. You lean against that.
Become an atheist. It's a lot easier.
He's an
Content over everything. Content over everything. From your belly.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to
You are limited, finite, and dependent. Allah is none of them. Okay. But if Allah is okay. Do you know why Allah told Moses, peace be upon him, you cannot see me here? He says, look, if you see this mountain stand, then you can see me. And when Allah revealed part of His glory in the Jannah, the mountain crumbled to dust. Moses, peace be upon him, fainted. And when he woke up,